Have you ever noticed how loud the world has become? Everyone seems desperate to prove something. Some people fight endlessly to prove they're right. Others bend over backward to prove they're worthy of love, respect, or attention. They explain, over-explain, repeat themselves again and again, and sometimes even beg, just to feel seen. But here's the truth. A Stoic doesn't do that. A Stoic doesn't beg for attention. A Stoic doesn't chase after validation. And a Stoic never feels the need to justify himself to the world, because he understands a simple truth: silence is strength. Now think about what most people do when they're hurt, rejected, or misunderstood. They rush, they chase, they scramble to fix what's broken by explaining themselves to people who have already made up their minds not to understand. That frantic reaction? It's not strength. It's weakness disguised as courage. Picture this. You call someone and they don't answer. You send another text, then another. You pour out your heart in a long message, hoping they'll finally see your worth. But the more you explain, the more you beg, the more of your power you give away. And that, my friend, is not Stoic. The ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, understood this better than anyone. They mastered the art of silence not because they were indifferent, but because they knew this truth. The more we cling to things beyond our control, the less control we truly have. When you chase someone's attention or beg for their understanding, you're essentially handing them the keys to your inner peace. You're saying, "My happiness depends on how you respond." But that's not peace. That's prison. Real strength looks different. Real strength is when someone disrespects you, and you walk away, not out of arrogance, but because your dignity doesn't need to shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It simply detaches, calmly and silently. And that silence is not emptiness. It's discipline. It's self-respect. It's inner power that whispers, "I don't need to be heard by you, because I already hear myself." And here's the part that unsettles people. Your silence terrifies them. Because when you don't react, when you don't fight for their approval, they lose the control they thought they had over you. That's why silence is not weakness, it's a weapon. So today, we're going to talk about silence as a source of power, not as a sign of fear. We're going to explore the type of silence that makes people wonder what changed. The kind of silence that allows your absence to speak louder than 1,000 words ever could. In this video, I'll break down 6 powerful truths, 6 reasons why silence is a Stoic superpower, and why those who practice it never chase, never beg, and never explain themselves away. If you've ever felt exhausted from overgiving, if you've been misunderstood, or if you've found yourself chasing someone who chose to walk away, this is your moment to reset. Let this message be the reminder you didn't even know you needed. Before we dive into the first point, do me a small favor. If this resonates with you already, hit the like button. Share your affirmations and thoughts in the comments as we go. Pass this video along to someone who needs this message today. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more Stoic wisdom and growth. But above all, don't skip a second. Because sometimes, one truth is enough to shift the way you carry yourself forever. Type this affirmation in the comments right now. My silence is my power. Now, let's begin with the first truth. Silence makes them feel your absence, not just hear your words. Have you ever noticed something fascinating? The moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop filling the air with words, that's when people start thinking. That's the paradox of silence. It doesn't push, it pulls. Think back to the last time you were hurt. Maybe someone disappeared without a word. Maybe they disrespected you, or turned their back with cold indifference. And your instinct probably screamed, "Say something. Fight back. Prove your worth." But here's the truth. The more you talk, the less they listen. The more you chase, the further they run. The more you explain, the cheaper your words become. Yet when you fall silent, something strange happens. Your absence suddenly speaks louder than your presence ever did. There's a powerful quote by Elbert Hubbard. "He who does not understand your silence will probably not understand your words." The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. Because silence makes people uncomfortable in a way noise never can. Imagine this. Someone expects you to beg, to argue, to fight for their attention. But instead, you retreat, quiet, calm, without a single word. In that moment, you force them to face something far deeper, not you, but their own actions. Silence is like a mirror. It doesn't explain, yet it reflects back a sharp message. "I saw how you treated me. I felt it all, and I value myself too much to waste my breath explaining it to you." That kind of silence doesn't come from ego, it comes from clarity. Because you realize, if they truly cared, they would ask. If they respected you, they would reach out. If they were emotionally mature, you wouldn't need a long speech to prove your worth. And so, you stay silent, and in that silence, you take back every ounce of power you once gave away. You stop pouring your energy into being understood by people who don't even understand themselves. You stop trying to heal through endless conversations. Because some wounds only heal in stillness. Of course, silence isn't comfortable. It will trigger people. It will confuse them. It will make them wonder, why isn't he reacting? Why didn't she reply? Do they not care anymore? And that's when the power shifts. Because silence whispers a truth they cannot escape. You don't owe them an explanation, not anymore. Truth number 2. When you choose silence, you hear the truth louder. The world is noisy. Everyone is talking, shouting, fighting to be heard. But silence lets you listen. Not to others, but to yourself. In moments of heartbreak, betrayal, or deep confusion, most people rush outward for comfort. They call 5 different friends. They scroll endlessly on social media. They even confront the person who hurt them, desperately hoping that the right conversation will heal the wrong person. But the Stoic takes a different path. He doesn't go silent because he feels no pain. He goes silent because he knows that real answers don't rise from noise, they emerge from reflection. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." When you go silent, truly silent, your mind begins to calm. And when the mind calms, truth rises to the surface. You begin to hear whispers like, "They never really respected me. I just didn't want to admit it. I'm not angry because they left. I'm angry because I stayed too long. I don't need closure. What I need is peace." These truths don't come in a text message. They don't come in heated arguments. They arrive in the quiet hours, when you stop explaining and start listening. Silence gives you space to separate emotions from values. Because when you're hurt, emotions scream. Chase them. Explain yourself. Prove your worth. But in silence, your values whisper back. Hold your dignity. Protect your peace. Let them go. That's why the Stoics never reacted in haste. They didn't make decisions in anger. They practiced a sacred stillness, a pause before the storm. Meanwhile, modern society shouts, "Speak your mind. Tell them everything. Don't let anyone disrespect you." But the Stoic knows something deeper. Respect isn't earned by reacting louder. You only truly earn it when you remain grounded in stillness, while everyone else is still spinning in noise and chaos. Strangely enough, the quieter you become, the more people reveal themselves. You don't need to ask, "Do they care about me?" because their actions will answer that for you. You don't have to beg for clarity either. In silence, the truth will gradually reveal itself. And most importantly, you stop living just to react to every twist and turn of life. And instead, you begin to respond with awareness and intention. Don't be mistaken. Silence is not passive. On the contrary, it is focused, intentional, and like a doorway to the inner wisdom that most people never step through. So, when you feel lost, when your mind is clouded by emotions, or when everything becomes overwhelming, don't rush to act. Be still, because the answer you're looking for isn't outside, it's within, and you'll only hear it when you're truly silent. Truth number 3. Begging for closure is, in reality, a betrayal of yourself. This is something few people dare to admit. We all long for closure, a final explanation, an honest conversation, a complete ending that feels at peace. But here's the harsh truth. If someone truly cared, you would never have to beg. They would give you closure willingly, out of respect, and if they don't, then your silence is the closure. Don't just talk about philosophy. Live it, as Epictetus once reminded us. At first, it may seem unrelated, but it's not. When you stop chasing closure and start living in alignment with your values, you no longer need others to validate your pain. The pain is real, yes, but demanding that they explain why they hurt you, that is handing them control over your healing. Notice the familiar cycle. They hurt you, right pointing arrow, you demand answers, right pointing arrow, they respond with coldness or avoidance, right pointing arrow, you end up feeling worse. And the cycle repeats, until you finally realize that closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you, when you are strong enough to be silent and walk away. It sounds simple, but the truth is brutal. You'll tell yourself, if I just tell them how I feel, if I just explain one last time, if I can just have that final talk. But what really happens? You end up speaking to someone who has already made peace with hurting you. You end up explaining yourself to someone who has already made their choice. You end up draining your energy, hoping someone else will fix the broken expectations inside you. And that's not closure. That's self-abandonment. The Stoics understood that emotions often cloud our judgment, especially when ego gets involved. You want to be seen as the good one. You want to be understood. You want them to finally realize. But chasing that only betrays your own growth. Real closure looks like this. You acknowledge that what they gave you was all they were capable of giving. You accept that no amount of explanation will make them more respectful, more kind, or more honest. You stop waiting for a conversation that will never happen. And in that acceptance, your power returns. The one who hurt you doesn't need to understand your worth. You do. The one who left doesn't need to say goodbye. You can end it in silence. The one who ghosted doesn't need a second chance. Because your silence is already the answer. So stop writing those unsent letters. Stop rehearsing the perfect message. Stop chasing closure from people who were never truly open in the first place. Choose silence, and let that silence become the very space where your self-respect breathes again. The fourth truth. Silence exposes what words always try to hide. When you choose silence, something powerful happens. Masks begin to fall. Words can be beautiful, but they are also full of illusions. People say what sounds right. They say what they think you want to hear. They offer excuses, justifications, even apologies. But silence is different. Silence cannot lie. Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." The Stoics understood this truth deeply. They didn't judge people by their apologies. They judged them by their patterns. And the best way to see those patterns is to stop talking and observe. Because silence is not passive. It is sharp observation. When you stop explaining, you give others the space to reveal their true nature. And trust me, they will. Those who truly respect you will miss your presence and reach out with sincerity. Those who only used you will disappear, because they never valued you in the first place. And those who manipulated you will grow angry or confused, not because you did something wrong, but because they just lost control. Most people don't realize this simple truth. Words can create illusions. But silence strips reality bare. You don't need to confront. You don't need to test. Just withdraw your words and watch. See who checks in when you go quiet. See who vanishes when you stop giving. See who gets irritated when they can't provoke a reaction from you. That is the truth, and sometimes, this truth cuts deeper than 1,000 arguments. Because people can dismiss your words, but they cannot dismiss your absence. They can debate your opinions, but they cannot debate your stillness. When you stay silent, you stop feeding illusions. You stop playing emotional games. You stop pretending that their words mean more than their actions. And that kind of silence brings you clarity. You no longer need people to explain why they treated you badly, because in reality, their silence, their distance, their actions have already explained enough. You begin to trust patterns over promises, energy over explanations, reality over words. That is Stoicism, not cold, but clear, not distant, but discerning, not emotionless, but emotionally disciplined. So the next time someone tries to talk their way back into your life, don't rush to respond. Just observe, stay silent, and let the truth speak without words. In the previous part, we said that silence has the power to strip away illusions and reveal the truth. And now, silence goes even further. It becomes the way you teach others a lesson that words could never deliver. You don't need to prove your worth in rooms where your silence has already spoken louder than any words. Number 6. It is your detachment in silence that teaches the lesson. There is something uniquely powerful about a person who chooses to walk away. Not in anger, not in drama, but in quiet separation. You don't slam the door. You don't send emotional final messages. You simply leave, and in that silence, you deliver a message far deeper than language could ever carry. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This reminds us that the true suffering begins when the mind is forced to replay the silence. When you stop responding, they are left alone with their thoughts, their guilt, their memories of how kindly you treated them, and above all, with the haunting echo of your absence. Your detachment says, "I no longer need to prove anything. I will not remain where I am not respected. I have realized that peace is more valuable than connection." But how many people can handle this kind of energy? Very few, because they are used to people who react, who beg, who fight for closure, who break down just to be heard. Yet when you choose silence, you stop playing the emotional game. You exit with dignity, and your silence forces them to confront themselves. They expect you to come back. They expect you to argue, to cling, to stay. But you don't, and that terrifies them more than any heated argument ever could. Because suddenly, they realize they no longer have access to your energy. They no longer hold control. They never thought you would actually walk away. And that is the moment the real lesson begins. Because people don't truly learn from words. They learn from distance. They don't change when you scream, "Respect me." If they change at all, it is because your absence makes them realize what they have lost. And if they don't change, that's fine, too, because the lesson was never for them, it was for you. You learn that your peace does not need permission. You learn that not everyone deserves an explanation. And you learn that sometimes silence is not just strength, it is healing. When you detach in silence, you break free from toxic cycles. You stop bleeding in front of people who cannot comprehend pain. You stop explaining storms to those who only know how to stay indoors. Detachment does not mean you don't care. It means you care too deeply about your own soul to leave it in a place where it is neglected. That is why the Stoics were not reactive. They didn't chase after justice. They didn't seek validation. They let silence speak on their behalf. You don't need to shout, "I'm done." You can simply be done. That is real power. And that is the kind of silence that terrifies those who once believed they had control over you. So don't be afraid to detach. Step away, go quiet, and let them sit in the empty space where your voice once lived. If you've made it this far, you can probably feel it already. There is a shift happening inside you. A quiet realization, a truth you have always known, but perhaps forgotten along the way. You don't have to chase, beg, or explain yourself to be worthy. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to sacrifice your peace just to keep someone else comfortable. That is the foundation of Stoicism. Not coldness, but clarity. Not detachment from love, but detachment from chaos. The Stoics taught us something profound. Silence is not weakness. It is control. It is the refusal to waste energy on what is beneath you. It is the confidence to know that your presence is valuable, even when you are gone. There will always be moments when emotions push you to react, to explain, to prove, but in those moments, remember this. Silence may not win you the argument, but it will win you back to yourself. Every time you choose not to react, you are building inner peace. Every time you walk away quietly, you are building self-worth. Every time you keep your dignity intact, you are building the kind of power that can never be taken away. And if there is one truth you carry away from this entire video, let it be this. Let your silence be your final word. Not out of ego, not out of spite, but out of deep, unshakable self-respect.